incident of Flugfelag Islands Flight 704. It is September in 1917 at Reykjavik, Iceland. The aircraft at the gate was a Fokker F27 registered TF-FIL and jointly owned by Flugfelag Islands and Scandinavian Airlines. It was operated by Flugfelag Islands under the Icelandair brand, waiting for its departure to Vagar, Denmark. Unfortunately, the flight was cancelled due to fog. On the 25th of September, a day later, the flight left Reykjavik and headed to Vagar in Denmark. But due to fog and 45 minutes of being in a holding pattern, pilots finally diverted to Norway, Bergen. The flight was peaceful, without any accidents on board. The plane landed in Norway at 18:22, but shortly after arriving at the gate, the captain asked for weather at Vagar in the next morning. The news was positive. Due to winds, there was a chance that fog would lift and allow pilots to land at Vagar without serious problems. At 6 o'clock next morning, the Vagar was still covered in fog. But just 20 minutes later, visibility cleared up to 10 kilometers, more than enough to land at Vagar. Both captain and first officer had the ability to land in such conditions. In the next hour, the weather improved even more and the captain decided to start. When he asked for a forecast, he received information that there was a half chance that the weather would be as good when they land. The captain decided to proceed. After all, if they couldn't make it, they just divert back to Bergen, so there was nothing to worry about. The plane took off at 22 past 8 a.m., turned left and proceeded to Vagar. Finally, as pilots descend towards their destination, they discussed the scheme. The landing was on runway 13, with wind at 140 at 15 knots. But what the crew was afraid, it was that it was raining. The crew perhaps got unlucky and the weather wasn't. But let's look further into weather forecast. Apparently, clouds were at 1,000 feet and visibility was 5 to 7 kilometers, which is acceptable, even if not as good as before. The top layer of clouds was at 1,700 feet. Not too bad, they just had to pass 700 feet of cloud and fight a little bit with rain. Overall, acceptable conditions. The pilots followed descent by one of Icelandair procedures. At one time during the descent, the captain noted that he could see the ocean from an altitude of 3,000 feet. Shortly after, pilots declared that they see west of Vagar, which was good news. But there was one thing. The pilots could not see the mouth of the fjord. The visibility, although, was 10 kilometers. Perhaps a rain shower was there. At first, the captain decided to wait for visibility to vastly improve. However, improvement never happened. The captain decided to ascend for holding pattern over the Mike Yankee radio beacon. At 10:30, aircraft reached 3,000 feet and held in pattern for about 25 minutes. While holding, the captain anxiously asked for the weather once in a while. At around 48 past 10, Vagar reported 4 to 8 kilometer visibility, and the captain replied that the visibility in the southeast had improved and they would start approach. At around 10:55, pilots reported that they are coming over Mike Yankee for inbound descending. So far, everything pilots still sounds as on scheme. But the thing is, they weren't following the scheme. The pilots actually began descent before the Mike Yankee radio beacon, breaking the altitude scheme entirely, without even knowing. The fact is, radio was unstable, so pilots thought they were passing beacon Mike Yankee, but in fact, they were not. Near the mountain, the altitude was around 1,700 feet, which is too low to be safe. After, they need the highest point of Magianas. So, just slightly above the ground, pilots saw the ground. They pulled the yokes back as hard as possible, but it was too late. At around 56 minutes past 10, Flugfelag Islands Flight 704 hit the ground near the top of the mountain. 8 people, including the captain, had perished. 26 had survived, including the co-pilot, some with serious injuries. 3 passengers hiked for an hour to reach the village and alarm authorities. Most of the villagers went up the mountain to aid survivors before the Danish patrol vessel would arrive. The cause of the accident was that Flight 704 began the descent through cloud procedure from a starting point other than over Mike Yankee radio beacon. During the procedure, the aircraft hit close to the highest point of Mackins at an altitude of about 1500 feet. The reason for starting the procedure from a position other than Mike Yankee radio beacon was probably an interference caused by Flight 704's weather radar, which caused the ADF to give the crew an erroneous indication that they were passing Mike Yankee radio beacon.